Rachel, today you have this prestigious position. You're a sales director at Prestige Capital. Just tell us a little bit about your journey. It didn't happen overnight. How did you get to where you are today?
My journey is an unusual one, and I tell young people all the time, life is not a straight path. And when you graduate from college, you may think you know what you want to do, or you may not know exactly what you want to do. I did graduate with a degree in psychology. I was not ready to go to graduate school, so I said I will work for various companies, learn from the inside out what any industry looks like. With that, I went to work for a publishing company. I worked for an advertising agency. I worked for a construction company. And all those jobs made me realize that being the assistant to somebody is not what I wanted to do. And what I really loved doing in the early stages was getting out and talking to people. I'm a communicator. I used to get kicked out of class for talking in class. And when my daughter would sometimes get that comment from the teacher, she talks too much in class, I said, well, her mom made a career out of it, so I think she'll do fine in life, and my son as well. So at the end of the day, I realized that if I could communicate with people, that's my passion, that's what I do. I had a job in a summer job out of college selling rings door to door. And I won the sales prize. And with that, I realized maybe I need to go into sales. Maybe I need to go into marketing. Maybe I need to communicate with people, and what is the best way to do that. So I left the job that I had working for an advertising company, and I went to work for a custom clothing company. And I found the ad in the New York Times, physical paper, which you don't find physical papers anymore. And I went on the interview, and when the gentleman that owned the company found out that I actually won prizes selling rings door to door, he said, custom clothing to executives in their offices by appointment, I think you're natural. And so the biggest problem with selling custom suits to executives is that in the days before the internet, you had to call people and get past a gatekeeper to get to the executive. And I was always I had a tremendous amount of chutzpah. I would call and I would just speak to the secretary in a way that made her so confused about who I was. She put me through. And I eventually became the clothier to some very prominent people.
Wow.
And one of the famous stories I like to tell is that one of the top bankruptcy attorneys, he passed away recently, but his name is Harvey Miller from Walgatchel. He handled the Eastern Airlines bankruptcy. And I saw him in the newspaper every day, and I said, well, if he's in the newspaper wearing suits, he probably needs a lot of suits. And I called him in the evening when I knew that the secretary would have gone home. And I said, Mr. Miller, I make custom suits, and I'd like to see you and set up an appointment. And he said, okay. And then the cool story is that, many years later, I am now in the finance industry, and he was an honored person at one of our industry events, and I went up to him and I said, cool suit, beautiful buttonholes. You remember custom clothes? And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember you.
That's wild.
Yeah. So that's the journey.
Now let's move to Prestige Capital. Prestige Capital is around 3.5 decades.
Correct.
That's a long time for any business. What's its secret sauce for success?
I would say the secret sauce is, number one, we have an amazing management team. We're owned by Harvey Kaminsky. The other executive teams is Stuart Rosenthal and Alan Eliasoff, our credit manager, Santo Caruso, and our account executives, whose tenure is an average of 14 years.
Okay.
And I'm there 12 years. And that is unheard of in our industry, where people move around. So why do we work as a team? Because we have really compassion for our clients. We are not cookie cutter. Every deal is not the same. We don't structure it the same. We look at our clients and say, what do you need? How can I help you? Is my program right for you? Not every person that walks through the door is the client. And then we sometimes put them in touch with somebody that maybe is a better fit. So that is really, I'd say, the secret sauce, is having a cohesive team who knows each other, who knows how to read each other, who, we jump on deals. We're deal junkies, I often say. When you get something and you want to do it and the client needs money quickly, we don't have this whole hierarchy. It's, the executive team sit down over lunch and say, okay, this is how we're going to structure it. This is how we're going to do it.
Now, Rachel, I have a lot to cover because, I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but people will be wondering, how do you differ from a bank and these type of areas? But first, I want to jump into the word factoring. I went on the website and I see that you specialize in factoring. And the fact is a famous, line about it's, factoring is not your grandfather's garment factoring company. Explain what type of industries have always been, a fit for factoring. What is factoring? That's a term that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Absolutely. So when I joined this company, by the way, I mean, when I joined the industry, and I'll tell you my history of getting to Prestige, is that I had no idea what this was. I don't have a finance background at all. I have a psychology degree. But what it isn't is it isn't as complicated as people think it is. It is literally selling your receivables at a discount in order to have money sooner. And so it used to be only done in the garment center. And that is what everybody knew, that, you would have your factoring company credit check your accounts and insure your accounts. It wasn't to get money per se. The banks would lend money, and then the factoring company really just, did the back office work. About 20 years, they started doing advances. Cash advances on your receivables. And even still, a lot of companies focus on the garment center. When Harvey started the company, he realized that there are tons of industries that need liquidity. Not all of them understand what's out there and how to work it. He, by trade, is a bankruptcy attorney. And being an attorney, you realize that there's just so many companies that need money, that if you put the right people in front of them who can give them the cash flow they need without a lot of drama, without a lot of complexity, then you'll be successful. And one of the things I do like to say is our motto is simple, fast, straightforward, flexible. And what is so simple? Our contract is 4 pages long. Most companies are 50 pages long. Okay?
And you just give up by the 4th page.
And we look at it as, if I can explain to you in 4 pages what you are working with me to do and accomplish, it's not scary. We're not scary. We're very friendly and easy to work with. Yeah.
Now, that being said, what industries are most likely to use factoring and or your services at Prestige Capital?
So I would say the industries that are very reliant on cash. I would say primarily you're going to look at service businesses. If you are, for example, an IT staffing company, the more business you take, the less liquidity you have. If you have a small loan from a bank and then you suddenly get 5 new accounts and you are hiring, payroll, you have payroll to pay out to your people, and you don't have the money to do that, nobody's coming to work if you're not paying them. So any kind of service business, whether they're laying carpet in the studio here or whatever they're doing, you need liquidity. The other big one is companies that are in any kind of consumer products or product business, and they get large orders. And they go, now what? How am I paying for this? I don't have credit with my supplier. How am I getting the money? And that becomes a difficult challenge. Recently, one of the industries, and I'll talk more about this later, is the technology industry. There is so much going on in the technology space. I can tell you stories on end about companies that are disrupting the industry, and you have to be an early adapter to understand what they're even talking about. When I first started talking to software service companies, I had no idea what that was. I had to read, I had to listen to podcasts, I had to talk to people I knew who could explain it to me. And most factoring companies out there had no idea, and they said, we don't know what you're talking about, and they didn't do it. We did do it. We taught ourselves how to understand the flow of the receivables and what the different income streams are, and they're complex, and you have to be able to ask and listen to the clients.
It sounds like at Prestige, you're not as rigid as other forms. Like, okay, if you don't fit, exactly within the square, then forget about it. You'll wrap your head around, okay, how can we make this work?
Yeah, and that's what I love about what I do is I'm constantly learning. I'm reading. I'm a voracious reader. And when you read something in the paper, for example, the New York Times Magazine had a cover story maybe a year ago about self-driving cars. The entire magazine was about self-driving cars. Okay. Within a few weeks, I had a robotics deal about self-driving cars and a software deal about self-driving cars. So looking, listening, learning, connecting the dots is very important.
I love the honor of interviewing C-level executives and sharing their great advice and perspective on Mind Your Business. I'd love to get your feedback. Post it in the comments below and subscribe. You'll never miss an edition of Mind Your Business.